Welcome to our fairy tale read aloud. As you remember, my name is Anna, and I'm so excited to read this fairy tale with you today. It's called Little Red Riding Hood by Lucy Roland. Do you remember when I asked you to guess what was in my basket? You may have guessed cookies, muffins, maybe pie. I bet you had a lot of other great ideas too. I'm going to show you what was actually in my basket. Let's take off the cover. I actually had rice in my basket. Is that surprising to you? I sure wouldn't have guessed rice. You may find that sometimes in a story, something surprising happens. Something happens that you didn't think was going to happen. The book that we're going to read today, Little Red Riding Hood, has some really fun differences from the Little Red Riding Hood that you might be used to or one that you've read before. Before we begin, I'm going to need your help. So today we're going to talk about characters and also some parts of the book. But before we get started reading, I want to make sure that all of my friends have a really comfortable place in the room to sit and listen to our story. I'm going to need you to be really focused and make sure that you have your eyes on me on the screen looking at the book and your ears tuned in and listening really closely to the story so you can help me find our characters. Are your eyes on me? Are you ready to start? I think we're ready. Let's begin. Now, before we start our story, I just want to talk about a few things, a couple of parts of our book. So, this is the front cover of my book. Right here, I see the title. The title of this book is Little Red Riding Hood. Now up here I see some names. First, I have the author of the story. The author is the person who writes the words, Lucy Roland. Then I have the illustrator of the story. The illustrator is the person who draws the pictures, Ben Mantle. So I have my title, my author, and my illustrator on the front cover of my book. If I flip my book over, this is the back cover of the book. And then right here on the side, this is the spine of the book. Now the spine of the book will also have the name of the story again and the author and the illustrator. This is what holds our book together. Something else that we're going to think about today is characters. Characters are the people or the animals that do things in the story. So as we're reading, we want to remember that we're listening to the story and we're remembering all of the characters that we see. I think we're ready to get started. Little Red Riding Hood by Lucy Roland and Ben Mantle. Little Red Riding Hood, written by Lucy Roland and illustrated by Ben Mantle. Little Red Riding Hood loved reading books, always curled up inside crannies and nooks. She read in the bathroom, she read on the porch, she read late at night by the light of a torch. Flicking through pages, her little head bowed, dreaming up stories and laughing out loud. But one day her mother said, "What a to-do! Red, this old library book's long overdue. You must take it back to the library today. But listen, I've something important to say. Don't ever stray from the path in the wood." "Yes, Mum," said Red, and she pulled up her hood. As Red skipped along, it was lovely and sunny. But suddenly Red felt a little bit funny. Uh-oh. A wolf jumped in front of her. Gruffly he said, "Where are you taking that book, little Red?" "The library," she answered, "to hand it back in." "Oh?" said the wolf, and he started to grin. You can see he's grinning. The wolf licked his lips, and he had a good hunch that Little Red Riding Hood might do for lunch. He thought, she looks tasty, a flavorsome treat, and maybe I'll read her book after I eat. I see he has a knife and a fork and some salt and pepper, so he must be ready for lunch. The wolf had a plan, so he said with a smile, "But why don't you stay here and read for a while?" Red was quite tempted. Her book was so good. So she strayed from the path and she sat in the wood. 10 minutes, she said, as she started to read. And off ran the wolf at a lightning-fast speed. Now, books have all sorts of strange magical powers, and that afternoon Red was reading for hours. Now over here she said she was just going to read for 10 minutes, but over here it says she was reading for hours. So she's probably staying a little bit too long. Now right here we're going to pause, and I want you to remember that I told you to think about who the characters are in the story. Who have we met so far? Well, we met Little Red Riding Hood, and we met the wolf. Did we meet anyone else in this story? Let me think. Sometimes I can turn the pages backwards to help me remember who I've already met. And here's the other character we met, Little Red Riding Hood's mom. Great job. Now that we did that, let's keep going with our story. Meanwhile at the library, what a barbarian! Wolf had tied up Mrs. Jones the librarian. Oh no. He put on her glasses, her colorful smock, and he said to himself, "Red is in for a shock." He's wearing her glasses and her dress. And here comes Red. A few moments later, Red opened the door. "Come in," said the wolf with a wave of his paw. He's telling her to come in to the library. Little Red Riding Hood put her book down and looked at the wolf with a bit of a frown. "Are you quite well, Mrs. Jones?" she inquired. "You look a bit different today. Are you tired?" This isn't what Mrs. Jones normally looks like. Red gasped, "What big eyes!" And then Wolf, with a sneer, said, "Yes, all the better for reading, my dear." It has big eyes. Red said, "Your ears are hairy as well." "And what," asked young Red, "is that terrible smell?" Ugh, there's flies buzzing around because the wolf is so stinky. The wolf ripped his smock off and sprang from his seat. "Enough!" cried the wolf. "Now I'm ready to eat." "You can't eat her up," the librarian blubbered, and with a loud heave she flew out of the cupboard. She's saying, "You can't eat Little Red." "That's just such an obvious ending," she sighed. "We've heard it all before. You at least could have tried. The wolf eats the girl up? Well, that's nothing new. What? The wolf puzzled. But that's what wolves do. Wolves are the bad guys. It says in my book. Little Red Riding Hood gave him a look. Now in the wolf's book it says, the wolf ate her up in one big gulp. Ha 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 ha. I wonder if there's anything else he can do. She sat by the wolf and despite her unease said, stories can end any way that you please. You don't like an ending? Red Riding Hood said. Then change it, arrange it again in your head. Just switch it and stitch it up some other way. The wolf nodded slowly and whispered, okay. So now they're going to read together. We're going to hear about some interesting new stories. Here it says, a beanstalk grew up from the crack in the floor. Come on, Snow White shouted, it's time to explore. And here Snow White is climbing up a beanstalk. Here it says, Peter Pan noticed the fairy dust settle. And now you can fly, he told Hansel and Gretel. Those are from two different stories. So back in her castle deep under the sea, the mermaid invited the wolf round for tea. The wolf normally isn't underwater with the mermaid, right? Aladdin jumped back and he gave a loud shout as his old fairy godmother tumbled right out. So in this version, Aladdin has a fairy godmother. It's so interesting how these stories are changing. He thought for a moment, a book of my own? And this time the wolf won't end up all alone. He picked up a book about shoemaking elves, then started to chuckle and search through the shelves. He's thinking of a whole new story for himself. I've found it, he shouted, and danced a few jigs, then borrowed a book about 3 little pigs. Little Red Riding Hood walked through the wood, the moon shining down on her little red hood. She curled up that night with a book in her hands and dreamt of huge dragons and magical lands. For, whilst leaving footpaths should never be done, straying from stories is all sorts of fun. So she fell asleep with her book, and now she's dreaming of lots of new stories with magical lands and all kinds of possibilities. The end. Now that we're done with our book, let's go back to the beginning and see if we can remember all of our characters. We'll do this together. So, at first we meet Little Red Riding Hood, right? She's probably our main character in the story because pretty much everything is happening to her in the story. On this page we met Little Red Riding Hood's mom. That would be another character. Then Little Red Riding Hood meets the wolf. He's another big character in this story. Let's see if we see anyone else. Anybody new and different in the story? Here's someone, Mrs. Jones, the librarian. She didn't have a very big role in the story, but she was still an important character. Do we see any more characters? I think that's it. Great job. That was so much fun. Thank you for reading this story with me today. The next time you read a story at home, think about finding our characters and the parts of a book. And remember that a surprising ending may always be around the corner. Everything we learned during our story time is going to help you be a stronger reader and get ready for kindergarten, first grade, and beyond. Please join us next week as we introduce a brand new fairy tale. Next week, we're going to start reading The Three Little Pigs. I'm so excited. And as a friendly reminder, make sure to ask an adult to download our printable activity kit at witschicago.org. Goodbye!